and then fart right then. Yes. All right. Prime time is over.
Prime time.
Thanks everybody for first of all being here, and then any viewers. Thank you guys for taking a listen. We are here today most directly to solve who is listed here on your screen as MJ Magos. I assume you're comfortable. You have a podcast, so I assume you go by your real name on your podcast. I've never listened to it.
Yeah.
It's Culture War Radio. Is that right? Did I remember that correctly? I'm not looking at it.
Yep. Culturewar.radio. Yep. I never talk about it.
So one of these days I should check that out. But basically, William has in the last, well, I don't know if it's exactly right to say that you've gotten involved in the last few months. I mean, you've been listening to Rhino's show longer than that, I think. But for the purposes of kind of the specifics that we're doing here, you've been getting more involved. I think that's fair over the last few months, and you've got some questions. And I thought, this is what I always think when people ask questions. If you're asking the question, somebody else has that question. So I thought, hey, let's get some experts on. And Rhino and Tom, I don't know if you guys think you're experts, but I think you're experts. So that's why I've asked you here today. Omar hopefully is going to be joining us. And then Mike, Omar of Netlabel Day fame, and then Mike from Black Sonic. He had a scheduling conflict. So I don't think that Mike and I share the same perspective on a lot of things. But I think Mike and I know the same stuff. So any sort of like historical, factual things, Mike and I have like that Venn diagram of what we know has a colossal amount of overlap. So hopefully I can step in from that. I have put in the YouTube description, which will also be on the PeerTube description, a list, like a little bit of, what's going on Mastodon link, and then some of the questions. We might not do them exactly in that order, but if people want to participate after the fact, then they can join in on that. So, William, I'm perfectly cool with you just running down these questions in the order you've presented them. But if you have like a burning question that's not in that order, I figure we'll just let you sort of ask the questions, and then we'll do some back and forth. Oh, and I should say before we get into our first question, hopefully Omar will join us at some point, because we're going to have the idea is that this will be like half an hour ish, and then we'll have a separate session. So there'll be two videos on the feed today, which will be more of a working session with some Netlabel stuff. Well, actually, I think we really wanted Mike for that. So I'll have to think about that. I didn't think about that when Mike said he wasn't going to be here. But anyway, let's go ahead and kick off the Q&A. And the way this will work is William will ask the question, and then I'll present it to one of our experts here. And then that way we can stay on track, which is not really one of my strong suits, but I'm going to try.
Yeah, but I'm here today, so I'll keep you in order.
Yeah,
but then I'm here, which is just going to completely just throw it
exactly.
off.
So maybe it's good that Omar's not here, and then we can bleed into that 30 minutes. But yeah, so we'll see how this goes. And whatever. A lot of the interesting things happen in the margins. So I don't want to cut off discussion too much, but I do also want us to be somewhat cognizant of the fact that we're using this as a tool for people to get involved in the community. So
there's so many.
Without further ado, William,
I want to hit. I can't think of any.
So how general should we? So my first question that I thought I would ask, but maybe I should go a little more general than this. My first question was, why should an artist release their work as CC Music? But then maybe I thought, is it even better to go kind of what do we think of as when we're saying CC Music? What do we mean by that?
Okay, I will answer that. So,
Okay.
What do we mean when we say CC Music? Creative Commons is a very specific thing. Now, that doesn't mean everybody uses it appropriately. And so I think this is where some of the confusion with Netlabel stuff comes in, because Netlabel is a very nebulous term, and we could get into some of that. But Creative Commons is referring specifically to a suite of licenses. Now, we don't what those licenses are and things. I don't think is relevant for this discussion here today. Maybe those things have been discussed before. If people want to leave a comment, anywhere where this is, and they want that information, I can find a link and get people that. But we're very specifically, when we say Creative Commons, we're talking about a piece of music, whether it's recorded or it's a sound recording, or it's a score, but it is a work of music that is under one of the licenses of the Creative Commons. So I said it's very specific. Now, I'm gonna backtrack that on a little bit, because there is one thing that people usually refer to as a Creative Commons license, which is strictly speaking not a license. Now, it's not used that often, but the pedants will probably, actually no one with a law degree is actually going to watch this, so I'm probably doing this for myself. But the CC0 public domain mark is not a license, okay? But it is a thing that the Creative Commons organization has put out as a legal document. So look, when you say Creative Commons licenses, to me, CC0 is included. But you wanna cross your I's and dot your T's. It's not strictly speaking a license. Now, there are some other things in some other free culture licenses. I mean, you can release music under the GPL, under any of the open source licenses. You can do that kind of stuff. Those are not Creative Commons licenses. So there is a separate thing, open source music, which I think is a much more complicated thing. Talking about like stems and maybe the tooling that you use in open source, like that is a whole, I think Tom has some things to say about that, but that is a discussion we really do not want to get into, because we would need hours to have that conversation.
Let me add something here while you're going into this. Now, while you're explaining that, the question was, what is CC Music? Now, when we say that, are we talking strictly, who are we trying to explain it to? Are we talking composers and musicians? Are we talking anybody that wants to put music out there? What is the focus of this? Because we could talk about all the iterations of Creative Commons creators for hours. What I'm saying, what I want to know is the question specifically, we're talking about net labels and bands and getting bands on net labels. Is that the focus of what we're trying to do? Because if we go into the whole extensive, creation of Creative Commons, that's what creativecommons.org is for. They explain the licenses. We can do a general focus. So we're here to talk about net labels. We don't need to talk about Creative Commons license in general. I think the question was, what is Creative Commons music? And I would say Creative Commons music is creators who are okay using these licenses that Doug is creating, regardless of what it is. I think that one of the focuses should be, as far as what Creative Commons music is, it is all music that is under a specific, we'll let you do this with it type of license. That would be there's no genre. Whereas like if you're an indie musician, it's understood that indie music is a style, even though indie means independent musician, but it means a style. Creative Commons music is not a style of music. It is a form of, protest, a form of rights management. Like that's what I would say CC music is, just to make sure that people don't think CC music is a new hashtag music genre, like, grindcore or, so because it's got music in it. And that's what I would add to it before we go into like even getting into CC0 and all that kind of stuff, which is important because the next tier would be, why would you use it? But we're not up to that question yet. But that's what I would say. We're talking specifically about music. And also when we're doing that, are we talking composers and bands, or are we specifically talking about bands because this is net labels?
Well,
yeah, think our audience is going to be recorded music. I mean, that's
Okay.
the reality of where we're. I mean, I think it's important to understand that that's not all that exists. But
yeah, no, I agree. But just before you were getting into the explanation of CC0, and it's like, we're getting way off track already. You know, like I understand that.
Well, yeah, I don't even know if CC0 is something you can pick on Bandcamp, but in any case.
Yeah,
and that's what I was getting at. Is like, are we talking about like something where there's CC license on Bandcamp, and why would a band pick that? Like, as far as CC0, like that's not even part of it, so it doesn't matter. So in this juncture, and that's why I wanted to say and define, is that what we're trying to focus on, just like bands and CC music and Bandcamp and stuff like that. So if we are, then that's what we need to be talking about.
Yeah, and I just want to go. I thought it was funny that you mentioned protest in that, and I'm not necessarily. I'm not a music creator. I'm just a creator. I'm just a curator.
Exactly, and that's important too.
And the whole thing is all this journey for me started out as a protest when the RIAA started suing customers.
Right.
And to where, for me, what it kind of means for Creative Commons music is music that is licensed in a way that's more prepared for the internet and understands the changing space that we're in, to where copyright was always about producing this physical media that you sit in a store and you sold to somebody and they had to travel there to get it. But that doesn't apply anymore. And Creative Commons licensing to me is just something that's more prepared and more embracing the internet culture of being able to copy and to repeat and stuff. And it allows you to build on the culture without having to go through all these extra loops.
Yeah, and I think another important part of this too, as far as, since this is, I mean, I'm assuming the topic here is net labels and net label day and building up awareness. And that's the general overall umbrella of this, correct?
It is the general overall, but again, maybe I should even add that as a question. But when I come into this, net label has never meant anything to me. I know it means a lot to other people, and that's kind of this issue that I kind of have. So when I come into it, I think CC music is the term, and it gets obviously complicated by what we've just tried to overcome here.
Right.
But when I think of net label, my initial thing goes to like, what the fuck do we need a label for anymore? What do you mean by a net label? Obviously, there's all this history to that, and that's what I'm trying to work through. And so when I think of CC music, it's exactly what you're saying. It is about, to me, and what Rhino said. To me, it's about the production, but primarily to me, it's about the distribution of music in a world where there's an internet and where it's so easy to spread music, and there's all the Napster history and all this kind of stuff. How do we make a world, I think, that is best for fans and best for artists, for musicians? And maybe there's this middleman thing that used to be a label. Obviously there's all the other bigger corporation thing. And to me, a lot of that is kind of a problem. And I guess I wonder, in this embrace of CC music, how do we make everything better for all the rest of us? And how do we embrace that? And that to me is the large conversation. Sorry.
To go one thing on the net labels, a net label to me is just a little bit of the curation of music, to where there's certain things to where, if it's out on a certain label, it's going to be a certain style, it's going to be a certain genre, it's going to go on through certain people that your taste kind of aligns with them, to where net label is just like a good place to go if you want to discover people that you want. That curation is already done for you, because when you go out on Bandcamp and you just try to find individual artists, it's hard. You sit there and you got to search for hours. You may find a track or two, but like, what is it? Think Root, like the one that for Professor Click and some of his friends work out of in Chicago, to where if you want something that's going to be kind of in that good electronica vein, you go to that net label and you'll have a whole kind of curated list of stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think the net label is valuable, is because it does give you that curation. But go ahead.
On the other end too, so for people that don't know what they are, or bands that don't know what they are, and this was my confusion early on, and also on top of it, it was a confusion early on because someone was doing it the way that I assumed before I knew what a net label was, did it. Now, when you think of the word label, which is in Netlabel, you're thinking like, oh, they're going to do promotion and creation and booking and all this kind of stuff like a label does. And one of the early people that me and Doug talked to was Bad Panda Records, and that guy actually found a band. And when he was on it going, I found this band called Dumbo Gets Mad, and I'm going to promote the hell out of them and get them on a world tour. And that's what he did for like the next year and a half. And they did, and they got commercial success, and he did that. And then he kind of, I don't know if he disappeared or what, but I feel like that net label after that happened kind of faltered a little, but go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, no, that was a good example. We should probably move on, but one thing that I want to, before we do, want to make clear is that there are net labels that do like the things that people think that traditional labels do. The term net label is very, very broad. So
yes,
I think that's part of the confusion that folks have, and that's not a confusion that we're going to be able to solve. That is like that's like like net level labels exist in like a quantum reality. Like that's like just don't think too hard about it. Like,
exactly. No, and that's what I was getting to. I learned that later on I really like when we first talked to them, I'm like, oh, they do this. And then we talked to several other net labels, and it's like, oh, they just find music they like and put it on their site and tell people about it.
And I think this is, even though I don't have any problems with the term net label, really. I tend to sort of focus more on, I mean, even though I do own an actual like business is a net label, I focus on the term CC Music because the boundaries there, and this is the point I was trying to make, and maybe I failed to make, but the point I was trying to make at the beginning, the boundaries there are very clear. It's either CC or it's not.
Right.
The net labels are a nebulous sort of thing. The Venn diagrams there have a huge amount of overlap, but you could be a net label and not be CC. It's pretty rare for that to exist, but it is technically possible. I mean, you get in this weird thing where you could have somebody with free downloads, but all rights reserved. But then you might have a net label who doesn't have free downloads, but their stuff is under Creative Commons. Which one of those is more free? It's an interesting philosophical discussion, but one we don't really need to have.
But again, it goes into kind of the next question, which, you know, why not release under CC Music? But go ahead.
Before we get to that, I'm gonna fuck things up here because I'm gonna bring up the fact. So on the Block Sonic website, a lot of I don't know, maybe all the releases, they have underneath the license. They have, if the above license doesn't already do so, we explicitly authorize the use of this remix during for-profit DJ performances, radio broadcasts, and in online DJ mixes. We do ask you notify us use in our curiosity, attributed and linked to where possible. Okay, so to me that is so coming out of this as a podcaster who wants to promote this stuff, kind of. Originally kind of felt forced to play it, but now is like connecting to it very much through the indie music kind of idea that music should get pushed around because we as people like it and can share it, and not, to me, corporations deciding, oh, this is the stuff you should listen to. But that statement under there, that to me is like the crux of it, but technically it doesn't have to be CC Music to be part of that. That's the question, I guess.
You mean it doesn't have to be used as CC Music, or I guess what do you mean?
That's my confusion, I guess, is like somebody could put out music but still say, hey, we want you to play our music. We don't have a problem with you playing our music. We want you to play it in for-profit DJ mixes. We want you to play it on online streaming shows. They can say that, right? I get the question here. Like I run into this problem kind of with people that I see online sharing their music. Let's say during Bandcamp Day or whatever, and they don't have CC music on their thing, and I can say to them, well, hey, I have this podcast, I'd like to play your music, and they're like, yeah, go ahead and play it. And I'm like, well, I don't want to play it kind of if it doesn't have a CC music license on it.
So that actually ties back from a story from the show. The T-Bird and the Breaks used to be one of my all-time favorite bands, still is one of my all-time favorite bands, still jam out to them all the time. But they actually went through and got new management who told them to stop releasing under a Creative Commons license. There's actually one of the old unformatted I did called the Bearded Trophy, to where they're like, look, we've known you for years. We're telling you that it is perfectly all right for you to continue to play our stuff. We know it's now under copyright. And since we were recording it live, I asked the chat, and the chat was like, no, we don't want it. If it's not released under Creative Commons, we don't want to hear it on the show. It doesn't matter if they give it. And it goes to a lot of the people that listen and a lot of people that care about this are the open source programmers. They're the people that embrace open stuff. And for them, saying that you can do it doesn't matter because the next person can't and the next person after that can't.
Mm-hmm.
To where then you're sitting there having to go through and manage individual license, get individual permissions and stuff like that. But going under the Creative Commons and having that link there, it's like, okay, it's open for everyone. And it's very interesting because a favorite band, you go back and look at Pint Size Voting Records, T-Bird and the Breaks has like 4 or 5 songs in the top 100. And when they were on the show and they asked about it and said, yes, you can still play it, the chat wholeheartedly said, no, you can't do it. I don't want to hear it because it's not the same thing to us.
Mm-hmm.
It loses the community feeling, right? Because it can't go viral.
Well, so I think there is a community aspect, but there's more than that. And this may be something that bands don't understand. So I think this is an important thing to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
The Creative Commons organization has vetted these licenses across the globe to make sure that these licenses mean what they think they mean. Like in Japan, in Germany, in France, the legal systems in the US and in France, for example, are very, very different. So for you to just say, hey, you can share this, that may not work in another country. But the Creative Commons organization, now we in the music community, we shit on Creative Commons, the organization, a lot because about a decade ago, they ditched us, okay? And that's a fact. Look, they did, but they also left us with these licenses that are super useful. And that's why the people have bandied around this, because you know what it is when you say that. And if you just tell somebody, hey, you can use it, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Like that probably means something to us. We're all in the US, but on the internet, what does that mean in Togo? Like, I don't know, but Creative Commons does know. So that's why it's important for people to actually use the license.
Yeah. That's a super good point. And then also to go back to kind of what you were saying on the Block Sonic site and the description you were reading, and going into a comment that Rhino made with the fans being the open source developer guys who are going, no, this is the license, this is how you use it. It does switch the other way though, because open source, even in say, coding and all that kind of stuff, corporations can use open source in their production. And so it does go the other way, where Creative Commons people can go, yes, if you contact us, you can use this in your commercial. But, it's just like you would with any musician, even if it is under copyright. If they're going to use it for something that the license doesn't allow, they do have to contact you and you have to tell them it's okay. And that sort of thing. So it does go the other way too, where Creative Commons musicians also can go, yes, it's okay for you to use it. But in that sense, like with what Doug was saying, it is on a case per case basis. It doesn't mean that once they said yes to this one person to use it in their commercial, everybody can use it in their commercial. You still need to contact the artist.
Yeah. And that actually, going back to that same T-Bird conversation, one of the things that got them upset and made them go away from Creative Commons is they always released under a non-commercial share alike. Well, Fox Sports actually used one of their songs for one of their full commercial videos, for a NASCAR video. And they had a lawyer say, well, since you released under Creative Commons, you don't have as much standing to go after them or ask for payment, which I think was just completely wrong. And
Oh yeah.
So that was bad. That was just bad legal advice.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, because at that point, Fox News is definitely a commercial entity. It would have been very easy for them to
Wait,
go.
they are?
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
but that's the thing is like
Going to
it
that.
was when somebody illegally used it for them and it went against the license and somebody told them, well, you can't go after it. And the thing is
And they even
could've.
use the license that specifically says non-commercial in it.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
they
what's
had,
funny.
yeah, and they could have easily gone and they could have easily, but it's also that whole legal environment. And well, we'll just go to the one thing we know copyright is kind of broken as a whole.
Yeah, that same scenario could happen to even just a regular musician that doesn't release under copyright. Not that people, never mind. I felt weird using the word regular musician, but yeah, that could happen to any musician. I mean, that
Yeah.
goes to just online in general. I mean, that that happens to us even under Creative Commons license with people sharing stuff or claiming music.
One thing people do need to be concerned about, not necessarily, I know some people hate Jamendo for doing licensing and stuff, and they've changed it and stuff. Don't need to get into all of that. But if you are going to somebody like Tribe of Noise or Jamendo or somebody that does licensing, like what you're also agreeing to a terms of service on that site. It's not just the Creative Commons license. So, if you put your stuff up on Jamendo, Jamendo's going to license that out to people. I don't know who's buying that stuff from Jamendo, but like it's not, hey, it's Creative Commons, and like that is it. There's other things going on. Now, I don't know what happened to T-Bergs and the Bray. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine somebody with a law degree doesn't understand what the word non-commercial, like,
Right.
Yeah.
that,
I mean, it's in the title.
That seems,
Yeah, it's in the title.
yeah. But so I don't know if they got, and this is one of those things with like the royalty free sites, and then sometimes they have non-commercial licenses on there, and I'm like, I just don't even understand what you're trying to tell people in that. The whole, I mean, we've talked about Netlabels and we've talked about Creative Commons, and then one thing we haven't talked about is free culture. That's another thread people could tug on. But then there's also this royalty free thing, and the royalty free thing, to me, I'm sure there's some, actually, I know there's one French musician that uses that term, and they license all their stuff under Creative Commons. But generally, when I see the term royalty free, that's like a huge red flag.
And you're talking about Rose Azerti, right?
Yes, and they have a few different like stage names that they go under.
Loyalty freak music, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you go right ahead, because I was probably just going to go on to the next topic
as
well.
That's the problem. I did the questions, but they kind of all interconnect.
Right. No,
so.
I have them open here, and I keep staring at them, so that's why I keep thinking of all the other stuff.
So I don't know. Next one to go to, just the normal one we're going to start with. Why should an artist release their music as CC Music? Things that I know about is just generally the idea of everything as a remix. So I think that's kind of part of the free culture idea. The way I really think about it is making everything easier to go viral, to kind of letting the public kind of decide what the most popular music is, which to me is really important. That's to me why I like the Fediverse and stuff like that. So, but any riffs on those, or obviously tons of other.
I will go with one of my favorite quotes of all time. I always attribute it to Cory Doctorow, and if it's wrong, tell me so. But he always said, "My problem is not piracy; it's obscurity," and that's what it does. It's like you could write the best thing in the world, you could make the best song in the world, but if you keep it under lock and key, nobody hears it. Doesn't matter. If a tree falls in the woods and nobody's here to make a sound, doesn't matter. Does it make the sound?
Right.
And that's the thing, is doing this does give that little extra leeway to be shared. It's like in the heyday of LimeWire and all the free music sites, it was suddenly these artists that weren't going to get the exposure, that weren't going to get on a label, that were suddenly getting these songs out to this wider reach. And it wasn't piracy didn't hurt them. It actually helped them because it helped them break through the obscurity.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I would add to that too. I know the example being LimeWire and Napster and all that. Musicians today don't know what that is. You know, that's the problem that we're running into.
God damn, I'm old.
No, we all are. And that, I mean, that's why I got into it. Napster, I was like, hell yeah, I want to share with my music. And I don't need to go through anybody to do it. I was putting all my stuff on Napster when it came out. And that was the beauty of it. And I loved that. And then when I heard about Creative Commons license, I was like, ooh, that sounds great. I want to put my music under that because that ideal is good. People still think that ideal is good, but they don't know that a lot of them don't know that there's a thing out there that does this. And that's the problem. Most people that I run into who are Creative Commons musicians are that because it's a checkbox on Bandcamp. And they read it and they go, oh, I like that idea. That's cool. Boop. And then they do it. And they think, you know, that's just they just think they're doing a checkbox that goes, I give permission for people to do this. The extent of their research is done right there is what I found out. I've talked to bands and I've asked them, why have you done that? And they said, because I liked that idea. I've only talked to a few who went full on in and were like, yes, and I believe in this ideal. I'm an art student. And they actually tell you about Creative Commons licensing as an option when you're in art school, you know, things like that. They're told that, but most people on Bandcamp, they're like, that's a good idea. And I'm allowing people to do that on my Bandcamp site. They don't know it's an entire ideal or an actual license that exists. And I think that's the problem. I think that that's what, otherwise people are just like, I'm sharing my music and they are doing the go ahead, use it if you want. That's the extent of it, or they expect people to share it, or they expect people to download it and do things with it. And that's just the way it is. That's the way of the world. You put your stuff online, your photos are going to be screenshotted, your music's going to be streamed. That's just it. It's, you know, Creative Commons, I feel, and maybe this goes to like with what Doug said, and the Creative Commons in general just kind of left the music industry or us musicians hanging high and dry, which I actually don't know what that's about. But I feel like they're not promoting that side of it as much. They are promoting free culture and, you know, the stuff they're doing across the globe, which is very important and is actually part of their nonprofit organization. But as far as music goes, I don't feel like that's really I don't think that's their high priority on their site.
I mean, arts organizations are like prototypical 501c3s. There's absolutely no reason why that they couldn't be involved in the arts. I think, and I don't have any inside information, I think what happened there is the IRS was starting to get to clamp down on a lot of the open source foundations and their 501c3 status because you know, open source software is used by corporations. And I think there probably were some bad actors. I mean, you know, anything that can be gamed will be gamed. And I think Creative Commons just said, don't want any of that. And, you know, because a lot of the work that people want to be done is in making music. But if Creative Commons wanted to put on live shows or do like commissions or something like that, and they could easily do that stuff.
Well, they used to seek out those websites. They used to go to, remember when they were bragging about like, we talked SoundCloud into putting Creative Commons on there. We talked to they used to do that and they don't anymore.
Yeah. And I think that they're probably right not to do that kind of stuff, but they don't do anything, which I think is not ideal. But that could always change too. I mean, like, you know, they could get a new CEO. There's a lot of things that could happen. I don't think they're the enemy. They're just not.
No. I'm not saying they're the enemy. I'm saying that, exactly. That's when the question is asked, why not release under Creative Commons music? It's like, because nobody knows what the hell it is.
And actually, I think it's funny. WJ Magoose will wearing the Resurrectionist t-shirt. And remember when we were in Milwaukee, I actually asked them what made them decide to release under Creative Commons. Mm-hmm. And their reason was Conan Neutron told them because it actually distinguished them in the marketplace. That it gave them something that was actually a little bit different that certain people looked for. And he said that he's found success from that people like us do go out looking for that. And he's like, yeah, it is going to distinguish you from other bands out there for certain people that's going to help you grow. And I think it's helped them.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking Friends of CC Music really could be. You know, if we can build a community around it, then there's like almost a set, oh, you know, come on in kind of thing, you know.
What it needs to be, and this is my opinion because maybe it's not the opinion of everyone, but here's the problem. What Creative Commons music is right now is it's a YouTube video telling you how you can make $1,000 a month making, you know, free videos with music in them. And what you do is you use Creative Commons music in the background. And what happens is all the composers, which God bless them for doing this, but the market is flooded with PowerPoint music. That's the problem. There are no Creative Commons bands right now that are in the forefront. So if you search for, like Doug said before, Jamendo, go try to find a band that's released a new album on there right now. You might find one. The rest of it is going to be, you know, sparkle setting for, you know, whatever the heck, and chimes and slow jazz for the back of your PowerPoint. Now, like I said, this is just my opinion as a band, but it's getting harder for us to actually get in the forefront and stand out, like Rhino was saying, because Creative Commons music means stuff that people can use in their YouTube video that isn't a band.
Yeah.
It used to mean cool bands that you can put in your videos. Now it's just like, oh, I need a beat that's going to go in the background. And then there's a bunch of videos right after that going, here's how to make beats to earn $1,000 a month.
Yeah, and then they sit there and put the music on YouTube, and they use it in their video, and all of a sudden they're getting takedown and copyright claims on it because the system's so broken.
Right. And that's my point. I'm not being the angry old man going, why aren't we in videos? What I'm doing is that the market is flooded. It's harder to find bands. That's what I mean. If I would gladly make beats and do $1,000 a month. That's fine with me. If I wanted to do that, but I like to make, I'm in a band and I like to make that kind of music.
Could there almost need to be another term that's almost like CC music?
CC music music in itself is a term that is, I mean, if you search that hashtag, it's very underused, not in the sense where Creative Commons music, you look at that and there's tons and tons and tons. And then people just, you know, look for Creative Commons music. What's the first thing that shows up in the Google search? Pexels or whatever the heck, you know, all that stuff. Search for CC music. That's not what shows up. So I think CC music is the focus. That is the common term for me, because it's more niche down. To use God, even I'm using marketing terms in this conversation.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because, you know, like on Bandcamp, they don't really talk about Creative Commons. It's listed as some rights reserved.
Right.
I don't know.
Same with YouTube.
I mean, maybe. Yeah.
But that is a good description to it when you're explaining it to new people. Like when I'm sitting there talking to somebody who's never heard of it, I always say, you know, you hear them broadcasts of NFL games and they're like, all rights reserved without express written consent by the NFL. And I'm like, that's all rights reserved. Creative Commons is some rights reserved.
Mm-hmm.
And usually that is something that gives people a good base understanding. That it is a good starting point for them to understand what CC music is about.
And the second one would be, in this conversation I've had with every musician, is when they don't understand it. And I ask them why they don't do it, but they, you know, I've already asked them, like, would you let people use your music in videos? And they go, yes, of course. And I go, then why don't you release under Creative Commons license? And it's because they think, one, it's free, two, you can't charge money for it, and three, anybody can use it in a commercial and do whatever they want with it. And it's just misunderstanding of the license again.
Yeah.
And again, there are different versions of that license, and there are people who choose different ones because of different things. And then there's the obvious one that says non-commercial, things like that. And but I wouldn't necessarily lead with that. I would just lead with, like what Rhino said, is it makes you stand out in the community. And do you have a passion for music and sharing it and, you know, letting people do artistic things with it and build upon it? The thing that always gets me is the remix and build upon. I think that's an important factor in what you say too, even though not a lot of people do, but these days some people do. I actually see a lot more remixing these days than I used to back when I originally started using Creative Commons music.
So I think we've kind of been going back and forth between why and why not. But I think I mean, there are reasons why people don't, but other than just ignorance, there's only one legitimate reason not to do it. And that's because your label says you can't. That's the only legitimate reason. But if you're thinking, oh, labels don't let me do it, so I can't do it now before I'm signed, that's false. There's plenty of examples of bands that are doing like the Resurrectionist or Conan Neutron, and they're getting exposure because of Creative Commons, and then those bands get signed. And that's been going on since
Jeff
basically the
Rosenstock.
dawn of
Blue
yeah,
Stone.
well, yeah, Jeff Rosenstock's an example because he was signed before Creative Commons, but
but he did quote unquote records and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he still was a supporter of the community.
He was in Arrogant Sons of Bitches before Creative Commons even existed. I mean, he was signed before. But yeah, Jeff Rosenstock needs his own like docu-series. There's a lot going on with that. With bringing
I like this.
up.
Now we're making movies.
Yeah,
no, kidding.
Yeah, but you know, so Diablo Swing Orchestra got signed to the In Flames label after they released a Creative Commons album. Now, I don't want everybody to just release an album and then stop doing Creative Commons. That's not what I want.
Right.
But if you're unsigned and you want to get signed, then releasing under Creative Commons is actually a good way to do that.
Well,
It's not a negative.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, there's a whole thing under contracts and stuff like that, and how many times bands have gotten sued by going to labels. You got to make sure it's a good deal to go over to the label. And
well, the label discussion is another discussion that, you know,
that's a sticky wicket there all around. Which is another reason for Creative Commons music.
And I do, you mentioned Jeff Rosenstock. I do want to throw the Blue Stones out there because I got to say, I did the show with Walls in North Carolina, who's on Block Sonic. And I was sitting there and I was listening and I'm like, holy shit, this is Blue Stones. And back in the day under Pledge Music, we supported their album through the 00 show. And it's like, oh, are you going to do this new album, Creative Commons? And they're like, yes, absolutely. It's going to be Creative Commons. They put it out there. Then they got signed by the label and they're doing great things now. Like got millions of views on YouTube, getting national tours and stuff like that. But they dropped the Creative Commons for the label. And, you know, that level of success for them, I can't blame them.
Can I ask a question? Is there a reason that a label would do that? Like, why do labels not want you to do it?
They don't want to police control whether or not people are using it correctly or not. That's all it is. Is control. I mean, you could say control like it's a bad thing, but there's also just like it's a pain in the ass having to deal with like YouTube takedowns and like, oh, this person is doing it right, this person isn't. If you just say nobody can do shit, then it's easy to police.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not necessarily like not all commercial labels are Sony or Universal, you know, like there's like small businesses that are doing it and they don't have time to do this. But it's like some do and some don't. Like Kill Rock Stars has had at least one band, I think. So the Warhorse is interesting because they were doing CC, and then their old stuff is still CC. I think. I don't think anything on Kill Rock Stars is the, but Five Fingers of Funk, their latest album, which is on Kill Rock Stars, is CC. So most of their stuff is not, you know, on the album is not CC. Like, so I wouldn't consider them a net label because they're primarily not. They're not giving stuff away for free, and they're almost exclusively all rights reserved. But you know, if you're a musician and you are, I don't know that unless you're, you know, super big time. If you're on a major, they're probably just not going to play ball. But an independent label, if you tell them like, hey, this is something we've been doing, we have our fans have always wanted us to do this, they might understand that. And they might understand that that's what you do. It just depends. I mean, so I would say just try it. Just like, look, if you ask if you can do it, and they want to drop you because you asked, you probably don't want to deal with those assholes anyway. Like, I mean, like, I'm just telling you, like, is it really worth it if they're just gonna like get pissed off because you asked?
I don't
like,
disagree.
The worst case is
Yeah.
they can say, you know, like, oh no, we've had bad experience. I mean, they could tell you like, hey, no, we're really not into that. You know, like we've tried that or whatever. It's not our philosophy, whatever. But if just for asking, then they're gonna like just like shun you. Then just like.
Could the band tell the
you should shun
label
them back.
we don't want you to police, like we'll handle it, or we just
No,
that's again
themselves.
Yeah.
What was
It's
that?
hard enough as an independent musician policing yourself, let alone now you're getting a push from somebody who actually has some marketing juice. That's a 10 times bigger task.
Yeah. I mean, if it might be if you came out of like a YouTube scene or you were doing like TikTok music and that is what you have done, like that is how the label found you, they might let you do that because that's shit you're already doing.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many people that applies to.
And at that point, why would you need the label if you're already doing it all in there? And the thing is that is the way it is today. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You
well,
that left and
so
right.
Yeah.
So bands might want to go to a label because they have a deal with the distributor. If you want to distribute physical items and be in a record store, so that's why some people use Block Sonic. And actually, like, and our distributor is really good. And Chuck D. I'm saying like everybody knows who I'm talking about. Chuck D actually told us that if he owns his own distributor, like he is his distributor. He's like, dude, if I didn't own my distributor, I would release with you guys because your distribution deal is better than I can do. But he's like, I also own it, so I get like all the money. So I'm not gonna go with you. But I wish Mike were here. But in any case, yeah. All right. Next question, William.
I mean, we did the first one. Why not release a CC music? I guess we kind of did. The only reason would be the label basically says you can't. I guess I've heard people. I mean, harder to sell out. Is that even if I don't know if I was what I'm really saying by that? Is a label? A label might not say, might not be interested in you if you're CC music. I don't know if that's true. And then the other thing is I've heard people say, I don't want my music. I guess we already went over that. I don't want people to use my music in ways that, it seems like I endorse things that I don't, but
yeah.
That's
that is one that I've heard that is difficult is like, if you're under a CC BY, anybody can use it. And it's like, it's hard to police that. Is like, you don't want Nazis using your music, but it's under CC BY. And it's like, oh, well, we found it here. And it is that association.
So that CC BY, is there another license? The other licenses are better for that, or
not really?
Well, I mean, if you are if you use a BY NC and D license, well, you don't even need the NC really. If you just use a BY ND, then nobody can make a derivative. So like, what are the Nazis doing with it anyway? Like in that example. So, I mean, the different licenses, they do different things, but, just if you're really concerned about that, then just don't allow derivatives. But here's the thing. If the Nazis want to do a parody of your stuff, parody is protected speech. So tough shit. The Nazis are going to do what the Nazis are going to do.
And they could do that to any music.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, like Nazi Taylor Swift music.
Right.
Also, can we move off this subject? I don't want to be talking about Nazis for the next 5 minutes.
Okay.
We're talking about bad things.
We're talking about hypothetical Nazis and what they can do with music. I don't think that's going to be part of ideas of building the community. So let's move on.
Yes.
I did have a bartender recently tell me, I watched Taylor Swift's concert video, and that just looked like witchcraft.
Maybe he was just referring to the Frank Sinatra tune.
Yeah, she's got a new album talking about that, so she got a new song on her album. Yeah,
the dances were very ritual and stuff like that.
Okay, here's a big one. How do we know what new CC music, and I would clarify that with Tom's comment, banned CC music, specifically, I don't know, that kind of thing, that
Yeah.
kind of CC. How do we know that when that CC music comes out? I mean, I know there's a Mastodon account that a bot that helps with that, but
Oh, there is.
yeah.
So this now first, I would say first and foremost, Doug. that's how I find out about it.
Yeah.
No, Doug is actually
so the answer is
very
very
good at that.
simple. Actually, you don't know.
Right.
I mean, unless you're following that musician, you don't know.
And that goes back to
So,
my comment
there's no
too.
central repository.
Yeah, my comment before, where it used to be go to Free Music Archive or go to Jamendo. Well, the problem is now you have to cipher through all of the composer tracks and things like that.
Yeah.
But
but
the other thing too, what I've learned, and this it kind of works. I do a site search on Bandcamp, so I go to Google and I do a site Bandcamp, and then you just put in whatever whatever their license, their naming for the license. I do a search for that and then do in the past month.
And that does
Yeah,
work.
I mean,
It's not the best, but it's the best you can. That's the best search you can get out of Bandcamp. And Bandcamp, please add that functionality. I have like almost 1,000 items in there.
Yeah.
And if I had that to be able to pick out more, I would buy even more.
They did update that you can use multiple filters now.
Okay. But sometimes
but the license is not one of the filters.
The license is not one though, no.
And you can search for Creative Commons music, and it'll give you some results that are licensed and some that aren't.
Yeah, but it does like most popular.
Yeah, it's just a tag.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
But I think
new
sources, I was going to say, is curators. And that's one of the things that like I do, and I think Tom does, and Doug, you do, is we curate the stuff that we like and we put it out there in a way that other people can find it.
And so should Netlabels. And also when we do these things, much like the CC Music Awards, are we telling these bands when we like find them? Are people reaching out to them when they're found, or do we just share it and go, hey, check this out? Like, is there any outreach being done?
There's some, but not as much as would be ideal.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think that's a good part of when we're talking about building the community and things like that as well.
Yeah.
It's really like I said, some of these bands are just choosing it because they're like, that's a cool idea. And it's like, why not go, hey, we do appreciate you doing this. And we actually have a whole community of net labels and things to check out. Maybe bands are always looking for labels to go to, and net labels, when I tell people about it, they go, what's that? And they go, oh, that's a neat idea. It's just communication, really. And I feel right now we communicate well with each other, but the bands, I think we could reach out to a little bit more.
Yeah. One thing, if any people that are curating Netlabels are listening to this and you're concerned that nobody is finding your site, I think having an existence on Bandcamp is really useful. Not that needs to be your primary site. Like, for example, if I go to hypnoticdirgerecords.bandcamp.com, the very first link of theirs, I'm getting paged, which is probably spam.
Hey, you won $1,000.
No. Well, let's see. What we got here? Senorita Vera Wilfried. That doesn't even make any sense. It's like two different languages. I think this is actually, I guess it's a name. So yeah, this is Spanish. So I'm not going to read it out, but it's spam.
What about when finding that, why not make a like a companion playlist on YouTube? Netlabel playlists.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, there is a Creative Commons playlist that Rhino helps curate, right, Rhino?
Yeah, the all CC music, like Starfrost started it off. I think Mike is as listed as one of the contributors and stuff. To where anytime I go through, because every week when I'm doing my show, if there's a video for it, I actually link the video on that playlist, and so you'll see a lot of stuff on there.
Oh, I never noticed that. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah. But then I've tried doing some other playlists, and it just, for the effort of doing it, it doesn't seem like there's that much discovery that goes along with it.
Do you
To
ever
where
do it by genre?
yeah, I actually have one I call 1,000 Points of Lo-Fi.
Neat.
That so
Oh, but lo-fi is like that's a
Yeah,
it's
that's a blanket term.
that's
That
a
means so
very
much now these days.
oh yeah.
well, there's that, but also it's like it's competitive. You know, like if you want the algorithm, that's a yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh,
You're
that
not
one
going to
is
get found. But
on there.
what I don't know if I ever finished this thought before I got paged. What I was saying was
That's your page sound?
like not a yeah.
Wow.
That way I hear it. The Hypnotic Dirge records. Their very first link is their website. So you know, like they have an existence. So if like Bandcamp ever goes away, they're just not reliant on Bandcamp.
Right.
But you know, right now there's not a better like single place to go. There's just not.
Yeah, and that just comes down to what I mean, like with the outreach and expanding on it. It really just comes down to, and for lack of a better way of putting it, marketing. I suppose it's just really. I mean, I know everybody's doing stuff to support it or curate it and things like that, and that's exactly what Netlabels do. That's what Rhino does every week, and even more so with just talking about the playlist that he's doing right now. Doug with the hey, everybody in the Creative Commons thing, here's a band that I found, this is in your region, all that kind of stuff. Everybody's doing that stuff. I just feel like we're the only ones that hear it, except for Rhino. He has a show that's on all the time and people listen to, so I shouldn't. You actually do a lot of the work in the outreach, and you're going out in the world and doing things. So this doesn't include you, Rhino. You're special and you're good. So.
Well, and I'm gonna say I don't even get to put in the effort I used to. Like my career has gone so well that I don't get to spend the time doing this that I want to. I'm still hoping Shibu Inu hits a penny and I'm able to retire early and just start doing this free. Like I've actually been thinking about it and discussing that in the next 3 years that I want to try to retire early, somehow create a nonprofit around the show and actually dedicate the next 10 years to doing this. But you know, there's been probably about 4 times in my life I've been about to quit my job and do this full time, but every time my career goes up, and it's like I can't argue with where I'm at. I mean, like I'd love to have done this full time, but I took the easy path.
Right.
I mean, it's just the way it is. I did drop the links to those playlists in here.
Yeah, I saw that. Thanks for that.
Yeah. The all CC music one is up to 989 videos.
Damn, son.
Yeah. It's got a lot of good stuff on there. The 1,000 Points of Lo-Fi is they've actually now blocked my stream at work on my work computer, so I can't listen to my stream anymore. So I always put that on there as my like work playlist, so I can just put that on in the background and listen to YouTube while I work.
So,
right.
So
I wanted to.
yep.
I was gonna say I think we should address one more of these questions actually, and I just want to know where this question is even coming from.
Okay.
It is, are live albums automatically CC music? I guess I don't even know why.
I don't know. I had heard something like that. I heard that if you had done, I mean, not CC music, I guess is not the right term, but if you have a live version of a song was somehow more legal to play or something than other stuff.
No,
the rights carry over. It's still performance by the artist.
Okay.
If an artist sings in public, it doesn't make it uncopyrighted. Yeah.
I think this may be what they're getting at, but it's like, this is like in another galaxy. This is that it's so wrong. But I think this may be where it's coming from.
The defense's argument is what it is.
I think what may be going on here is we're talking about covers. So if you play live and you're in a venue that's paying for royalties, then you can play anything that's a member of those. So if they're paying ASCAP and BMI royalties, which they probably are, then you got their whole catalog. You can perform anything. I think that's where that question is coming from, but it has nothing to do with Creative Commons.
Right. And this has always been my argument where people, this is why ASCAP and BMI payments are such bullshit. You think if anybody in a club covered one of my songs, someone from ASCAP is there going, hey, somebody covered your song, so we're going to pay you money for them doing that in this club that's paying these rights. No, they're not. But yet you still have to do that to play covers in or even play music in a place. Anyway, sorry, that was just a little rant.
Well, and I want to go back to some, and this was kind of like on archive.org, they have the live music archive. I don't know if you guys have ever gone through there, but certain bands actually give permission for all their recordings to be on there, and you can sit there and download and get them all for free. And there's thousands upon thousands of them out there, and there's some good stuff on them. All right.
So isn't there like 2 record stations or something, KEXP or something that they'll have bands in that'll do?
Yeah. So those bands,
but that recording is they're giving the rights when they talk.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, they sign a waiver. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is. So we're getting into some interesting territory, and we're gonna not dive into this. But if anybody wants to,